Let us start off the session by chanting Namadasa. Namo tase bhagavatu arahato samha sambuddhase. Namo tase bhagavatu arahato samha sambuddhase. Namo tase bhagavatu arahato samha sambuddhase. All right. So in our last session, we discussed the discerning of the mental proliferations, which was on page number 112 of the Madhupindika Sutta. To which extent did we finish the mind-based proliferation? On page number 114.
We finished, we were doing 6.14, the discerning mental proliferation for conscious process, the I-based.
Okay, that is on page number
112.
112, okay, 112. Okay. So last week when we discussed the I-based proliferation, right, with regards to the sensations, the perception, and the initial application vitakka, which we discussed in discussing the I-based proliferations, we do go into the stream structure of understanding the process of proliferation with regards to what we discuss with the eye. The same goes for the rest of the senses, right? The same goes for the rest of the senses. But to sort of revisit what we have discussed last week, or did we cancel last week? I feel like we cancelled last week, didn't we? All right. A lot of that going around and happening. All right. So we will start with this section, that is section on page 112, discerning mental proliferation, and continue along that. Discerning mental proliferation, a conscious process. I-based proliferation. Indeed, also, when there is the I form and I consciousness, a manifestation of contact can be discerned. A manifestation of contact can be discerned. It is possible for this to occur. It is possible for this to occur when there is manifestation of contact. A manifestation of feeling can be discerned. When it is possible for this to occur, when there is a manifestation of feeling, a manifestation of perception can be discerned. It is possible for this to occur when there is a manifestation of perception, manifestation of thinking can be discerned. It is possible for this to occur when there is a manifestation of thinking, a manifestation of an assault by a proliferation of concept and perception can be discerned. It is possible for this to occur, right? And then we move on to the ear base. In the ear base, similarly, now dubbed in for the points of contact that we would assume the eye to have, now the ear base would take its effect. For example, the eye being what manifests contact, to the ear having the sound, and that respective consciousness to arise. So it is the same. So we don't not have to go through each one of them, right, with regards to the sense bases. Now, if we go through this part, although we have already, if we go through this part, possibly in uncovering or discussing something that we might have not discussed in the last class, the previous class, we discussed that when we talk about a manifestation of contact, which gives rise to Vedana, Sanya, Vitakka, and all in all, which goes into the producing of those factors necessary for prapancha, or the process of prapancha, to take effect, we discussed that when we observe, when we take in these elements of sound, of rupa, physical representation, of all of these manifestations which would be there, of all these manifestations which would be there, we discuss that in these manifestations, the only reason that we perceive each element to have a sense of I in it is because we put the I into that respective process. We put the I into that respective process, which allows or which keeps the prapancha process active. Now, as we discussed, and as we go on to discuss even in future sutras, contact, feeling, perception, thinking. Now, these factors of consciousness and mental factors, we must understand in this sutta, with regards to shedding light upon the prapancha process, we are taught, or it is produced to us in a way that these arise one after the other. But remember, now this is a very subtle process, and in this process, remember that each one of these factors have what we refer to in the Patthana as anya manya pachaya, which is the mutual conditioning, right? According to anya manya pachaya, right, mutual conditioned relations, what that talks about is how each of these factors which are named within this category as contact, feeling, perception, thinking, are all interdependent upon one another, are all interdependent upon one another. For the process of consciousness to proceed, to happen, to occur, these named factors of contact, feeling, perception are integral parts of consciousness itself. Now, what do I then mean about consciousness if I am referring to consciousness individually from contact, feeling, perception, thinking? Remember that consciousness is somewhat like, for example, India, or if you even take Burma, right? The Myanmar people, if you would, the Myanmar is a collection of different states which have been, which was brought together under one political wing, right? Under one political wing. If you are to ask a person from, for example, Shan state, whether the person is Burmese, the person will take a lot of offense, right? So you never ask any person whether they are Burmese, just to be on the safe side, right? Just to be on the safe side. We would usually ask them, where are you from? Rather than insinuating. Similarly, remember, just as we call a collection such as that Myanmar Similarly, it is the processing of all of these factors which are mentioned here, which we call consciousness. That is an important point to have in your head. Consciousness is the process itself. It is not a shell. It is not a package. It is not something that we identify with. It is an action. What is then the action? The action is Vedana. The action is Sanya. The action is Vitakka or thinking. The action is all of that which goes on to create whatever we refer to as the Prapancha. Because it is so deeply linked to this concept of I, to this concept of I. Right? Even at this moment, when you are listening to me, right? When you are listening to me, if someone needs to disturb you, right? You are going to say, please go out of the room, or please do not disturb. I'm listening to this, right? That is the way we communicate. That is the way that we sort of say, I am doing something, please do not disturb. I'll come back to you afterwards, right? Now, even down to that basic program of how we communicate, we have the I instilled upon each and every part of that action. Right? We are studying about non-self, but we use self to understand non-self. Right? It is this reason why the Buddha goes so deep to tell us, look here, just because you recognize an action and you would name it as not yours or not you, that is not enough. We have to be able to bring ourselves to a status where one would be able to now be aware of this mechanism in place, which has been put in place by nature itself. Right? Because that is what we call a laukika bhumi. Just like, for example, kama avacharatiti kama vacharo. Right? What does that mean? That is the description of kama vachara. Kama avacharatiti. Because you ravel and unravel repeatedly in the sense pleasures, it is known as the Kama Vachara Bhumi. The Kama Vachara Bhumi, the Rupa Vachara Bhumi, and the Arupa Vachara Bhumi are all known as Laukika or mundane. Why? Just as in the Kama Vachara, the repeated, because it is laukika, because we repeatedly advert to the mundane facts of that life. It is in order to break that continuum that we bring in this notion to understand how intricate the processes of the mind are, and in that intricacy, how we sort of grapple onto the fact of I, right? The fact of I. So understand, right, that contact, feeling, perception, thinking, although we might try to put this to arise one after the other, it arises mutually conditioning one another, supporting one another, and helping one another to exist, which allows for this perception or awareness of whatever which is happening at that moment to be something that we are very much aware of, right? That we are very much aware of. That goes for, so then in Vedana, Sanya, Vitakka, right? We have a Passa Vedana Sanya Vitakka. in all four of those, what then leads to prapancha, right? What then leads to prapancha? It is the Panchapadana skandha, which is basically, right, which is basically bringing the concept of I into the parts of being, the 5 parts of being, right? Bringing the concept of I into the 5 parts of being. Now, there is a um, there is a school of thought which goes with the prapancha. What is that? That is, now, prapancha, proliferation, it's a big word, right? Proliferation is a big word. I think all of us can understand the effects of saturation, right? Saturation, or, the simple act of pouring water to the mouth of the glass, to the edge of the glass, mouth of the edge of the glass, right, to the top, where now it is so full that it is overflowing, right? That is what saturation, or this effect of proliferation, that is the image that we have of proliferation, right? It sort of gushes, right? Almost like, or as fast as a tsunami would come onto the land and sort of wipe and sort of cover the buildings or whatnot. Just that image, right? Now, what is the school of thought? The school of thought is this: can the mind be proliferated, right, by things, by all objects? That is my question. Now, I have obviously heard it, and I know what the sort of this thought of the pattern of thought is. I would like to ask you the question, right? Can the mind, or can proliferation happen from any object? What are your arguments? Would you say yes? Would you say no? What do you think?
Depends if the object is very slight or whether it's great or clear or obscure. So if the object is very obscure or very slight, then I may be wrong. I just thought that it might be more difficult. But if it is a physical thing and it's very great, or if it is clear at the mind too, then it might be a little bit more. That's just a thought I had, but I may be wrong.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it can't occur. It depends on the person who's looking at it, because an arahat might look at the object in a different way than a mundane person. But you can stop the proliferation by looking at the object without upadana skandha, without tanha ditthi mana. If you look at the object without tanha ditthi mana and without the upadana skandha, the mind will not proliferate. That's what I thought. I may be wrong.
Okay. We are very general. We are very, very ambiguous. Very general. Can we focus a bit more? Focus in the sense of, bring it to, because what we are trying to discuss is the nature of proliferation, right? Is the nature of proliferation on its own. Can we be proliferated, if I may use proliferated, by anything? Are we that weak? Or the fact of, if we are proliferated by each and everything that we hear, smell, see, taste, and feel, where is the coming out of this? You know what I mean? Yeah. What do we think? What do we think? I mean, it would be nice to sort of hear your thoughts. I think others may also have similar thoughts. Doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. I think there's no right or wrong really. It is. So what do you think, Gamini? You have to unmute yourself, Gamini. Any thoughts, Gamini?
Prapancha happens all the time in the Sammuti world to a Pratyajna person.
Why?
Because mind is not on one object.
No. Let Gamini explain.
Yes. And the upadana, the attachment is so high. And it happens all the time with the six sense basis.
Okay. Thank you, Gamini. Thank you. Okay. Who else? Others unmuted. I heard Damsiri, yes? You can't hear you, Damsiri.
As long as you have latent tendencies, and that will propagate the prapancha, right? So the reason behind the continuation of prapancha is your own latent tendency which is called in Pali, it's called what's the word? Anusaya. Anusaya can become asrava, and that is the reason that can continue actually.
Anusaya become asrava. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anusaya can become asrava. But Damsiri, if we think about it in this way, right now I am going to sort of draw parallels with what you said and what Gamini said, which is now Anusaya is there all the time.
Yeah.
Right. I mean that is who we are. Yeah. Now, prapancha and Anusaya, when it arises, what comes first, if I may ask? Does the fact of attachment come first, or does the perception of the object come first?
Perception?
Of course.
Yeah.
The perception of the object has to come first.
Yeah.
Right? The perception of the object having come first, we choose to hold on to the object in a way that now the way that we give meaning to the object now involves you playing a part in that object's life. That's the way that we have been programmed to give meaning. So attachment, meaning what you want, what you crave to have, what you want with you, things that you want to associate with, you give it meaning by giving that perception sort of a sprinkle of somewhat of your ego to connect that object to you. Can there be moments then, right? Can there be moments then where we can cognize and yet where we do not attach? Can there be moments?
Bhante,
doesn't it depends on the individual who is reacting?
But here,
Yes.
though we shouldn't be that gross in seeking out the answer, I believe. Because anyways, individuality, it's given. There's nothing to talk about it. Nanata Kai, Nanata Sanya, everyone has different. But the law of cognition is the same between all of us. It's the law of cognition that we are really talking about, not the individual. You know, so that said, we can draw parallels with what Bill said, which is now, for example, let's say, okay, you drive. When you drive, or sometimes maybe when you're going for your walk, or, you know, there are so many things that we look and we are happy about. And then there are things that you don't even really bother with, maybe. For example, the road that you walk on, right? We are very aware of the road, right? We are aware because we don't want to fall over. We are looking, you know, all of these things. But are you clinging onto the road? Not really, are you? If you really sort of think about what's going on, no. Maybe if you see a flower, maybe if you see a nice house, maybe if you see a beautiful scenery, yes. But the road you're walking on is not something that you're clinging on to in that way. So now, prapancha, what is the school of thought then? The school of thought within certain members of the Forasanga remains that prapancha can be caused by when the object has been given a personal connotation. Right? Now, for example, you see some parade, a funeral service, right? You know, you see it while you're going outside to put your garbage in the can, right? You see, okay, you put the garbage and you come back in. No one's crying in your house, right? But when someone in your house or someone, a relative of yours, passes away, now how does that, now this is a relative or a friend or someone that you knew, maybe your grandchild's teacher that you probably have seen a couple of times in picking your grandchildren up from school, maybe, right? Some sort of personal connotation to that object. Now there is saturation, right? So there is, please know, and now this is a point where someone can say, oh no, you know, that's all lies, you know, it arises all the time, right? But in practical aspects, this is a thought that is being entertained, and which is quite feasible, don't you think? Panchupadana skandha, the 5 aggregates of clinging. So how does clinging become, the 5 aggregates become the 5 aggregates of clinging? It is because of the attachment towards the 5 aggregates in thought of it being you or me, myself, and I. That's when it becomes Panchupadana skandha, or the 5 aggregates of clinging. Without that attachment, it will be pancha, 5 aggregates.
Yeah.
With the clinging, it will be the 5 aggregates of clinging. Similarly, the saturation, right? The saturation, for it is somewhat like you will eat something that you like, but you are not willing to stuff yourself up with something that you absolutely despise, or something that you do not, despise is the wrong word. Despise can also cause saturation. Something that you do not care for, right? Something that you do not care for, you will not be willing to stuff your face with it or to be bothered by it, right? It is something in that way. Now, for example, it is raining. It's the usual rain, right? Not pouring, not too little, just the right amount of rain. Sometimes when it rains just normal, you don't really care about it. You only care about it or notice it when it rains a lot or when it rains too little. In that way, whenever we bring a personal aspect to that understanding, there is a school of thought which says that is where prapancha occurs. That is where prapancha occurs. The attachment or the personal connotation that we place into objects. Any questions?
It's Sakkaya Ditthi. In other words.
Yes, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Sakkaya Ditthi. I think if we just say Damsiri, if we just say Sakkaya Ditthi, it is covering one part, isn't it?
Yeah, okay.
Adhd mana, right?
Yeah.
So it is only covering one part. We have to be vigilant to use the right word in that sense, which will cover all.
Okay,
Right? I think tanha, ditti, mana, in every case, there is this sort of avidya, ignorance, and craving. In that way, form the bond or the super glue between these sort of forces. Because in prapancha, it just seems that prapancha, all three of these, arises at the same moment, regardless of whatever it is. Tanha, ditti, and mana. It supports one another in that way. Right. Samantha has said on the chat, Mante, is it because one is not in Sati in the present moment? Samantha, remember, Sati is there in every moment. Right? Sati is there in every moment, in a meditator or a non-meditator. Right? That is what allows us to not be restless. Right? Without Sati, we will not be able to take in anything. You would not be able to come onto Zoom or even have a laptop or a computer for that instance, right? Sati is what helps us to remain in an object or focus on one object. It is there all the time. Sati for a meditator is where we can maintain ourselves on one object for a prolonged amount of time of our choosing, whilst there are many objects. Then that Sati is a little bit special, but remember, it is the same Sati as a Sati in a child, right? As the Sati in a child. For example, now one of the least diagnosed, and I think also wrongly diagnosed conditions, ADHD, right? Still up to this day, there is so much of sort of debate whether ADHD is actually real, right? Some say it is, some say it is not, right? Now, what are the exercises that are there for ADHD in terms of, it's all Sati or awareness building exercises, the games that they have, right? The way that the classrooms would be made in order to help the student focus. It is to sort of boost that Sati element, right? To be able to maintain yourself upon one object. Regardless, Samantha, Sati is there all the time. So it is not because of a lack of Sati, because there is no such thing. There will always be Sati, but what we are talking about is then the quality or how effective the Sati is, right? All right.
Bante.
Yes, Samantha.
Yeah, I was just thinking like not just normal Sati, but Sati with the Sampajana and Yoni Manasikara.
Yeah.
Both of those themes connected together. That would lead to stop less proliferation. And also, what is the difference between clinging and attachment? Is that the same thing?
Okay, clinging and attachment. I think there were theses written on this sort of clinging and attachment, you know. There is so much of detail to that, but I think in clinging and attachment, which would be tanha and upadana, tanha and upadana, right?
That's clinging and grasping. Tanha,
upadana. What is clinging? Tanha. What is the word for clinging? No, it's
Clinging is upadana. Clinging is upadana, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So in tanha and upadana, just like dosa and vyapada, right? Just like dosa and vyapada, which is hatred, and vyapada is, what's vyapada? Dil, do you remember what vyapada is?
Aversion.
Aversion. Okay. The English word doesn't really do justice, but if we take, for example, we'll take dosa and vyapada. Dosa is hatred. It sort of refers to, if we take the meaning on its own, it refers to the whole length of whatever, which is from sadness to innocent crying to bombing a country. It spans from everything. But if we take the difference between these two words, dosa and vyapada is like a snake. You don't let go of it, right? You keep on attacking and attacking and attacking, right? Similar with tanha and upadana. Upadana is like a person clinging on to life, or the person clinging on to their last and final piece of property with all their might, not willing to let go at any cost. That is what upadana is, right? Upadana, you do not want to let go of it. You find some way to cling on to it, right? You find some way to cling on to it. That is upadana, right? And do not think, although it can be quite rough and aggressive how we define it, upadana has its own finesse. You will find ways for upadana. That is what upadana is. You will be creative. You will be conniving, cunning. You will find different ways to cling and attach. That is what we mean by that web you weave. You will find reasons to stay attached. Now you will bring in purposes to say, okay, I must be doing this because of X, Y, and Z reason, right? You will find reasons. Whereas, for example, tanha refers to that process where you have a like. It doesn't refer to that sort of going behind it, planning, that conniving nature, the cunning nature. That is all upadana, just like in vyapada. Vyapada, you will scheme and plan, and you will be happy on the details of how you're going to do wrong or how you are going to hurt a person, right? That is vyapada, where you can't let it go, right? And of course, there are different parts to vyapada also. But remember that it is where you sort of scheme. It is somewhat like, okay, there are some meat eaters who are just meat eaters. They'll go to the grocery, get a chicken or get whatever cut they want, that is it. Then there are meat eaters, you see a chicken on the road and you're thinking of the recipe. Right? You see the turkey, the innocent turkey, and you're thinking about how the dinner table would be with the turkey on it. Now that is somewhat like that upadana and tanha. It really is. It really is. Now you're salivating, you're mouth-watering, you're imagining, you're thinking about all those creative ways. That is that difference between, for example, dosa and vyapada, and tanha and upadana. Samantha, did I answer your question?
Yes, Bhante, brilliant. Thank you.
All right. All right. So, any other questions before we move on? All right. Let's move on. Now, page number 114, please. Right. Indeed, also, where there is a mind object, and mind consciousness, a manifestation of contact can be discerned. A manifestation of contact can be discerned. It is possible for this to occur, possible to know this, when there is a manifestation of contact, a manifestation of feeling can be discerned. It is possible for this to occur when there is a manifestation of feeling, a manifestation of perception can be discerned. It is possible for this to occur. When there is a manifestation of perception, a manifestation of thinking can be discerned. It is possible for this to occur. When there is a manifestation of thinking, a manifestation of an assault by a proliferation of conception and perception can be discerned. It is possible for this to occur. Right? It is possible. So it is coming out of the subtler parts into the more gross parts, enabling our poor weak minds to understand what is going on. And when it comes to something as mind-based, the process gets far more complicated than we would experience with a sense-based object of proliferation. Why? It is so much more intimate. It seems so much more real. It seems so much more relatable. It seems so much more truer for these reasons, right? For these reasons. That is why we are unable to attain Nibbana without meditating, right? Just imagine if we are to even entertain the thought that we are able to, with these complications of mind, to be aware of something so subtle as the arising and the passing away of prapancha through just Dhamma Desana and Dhamma Sakaccha. What a joke. It's very difficult. It's very difficult, almost impossible. Why? Because our minds, not because of any reason, our minds are too gross. We just operate at a far grosser level than what we need to be operating on to see this level of reality, right? To see this level of reality. Right? It is somewhat like, for example, kids on social media, much like, when they're on social media all the time, they think the world is social media, right? We who are not on social media all the time, we might see a different world out of the digital world, which might be in some cases much more in tune with reality in certain cases. See, the grosser. So without coming down to be able to see this through a humble eye of humility, how in the world can we see the rising and the passing away of perception or prapanchas? Because prapancha, this voice inside your head, the judgment calls that you make, they are all prapancha. They are all prapancha. Now, I have been getting some questions. I can't remember from who, but the question was, why can't we meditate on this was on actually Dhammanupassana day, right? Dhammanupassana day, someone asked a question. I think it was not anyone here, but the question was, why can't we meditate on prapancha right at the beginning? You do not do it. That is very important. No, it's too much. It's too much. Why? Because there is so much of one. You are going in meditate now. When we say prapancha to our Buddhist minds, prapancha is not something which is good, is it? Right? It is not. That's the big, why do we see it that way? Because that is how we have been programmed to think. Just imagine when you are meditating, And each and every phenomena that arises, each and every vitakka that arises, if one is to note them as prapancha and to slide them away, it's going to be a very difficult task for a person to find grounding to be. Grounding to be. I hope you understand what I mean. Because we all need grounding. Some of you are grounded on the fact that you are a mother, a wife, a husband, a partner, a person with a family, a Sri Lankan, a person with a specific job, a person with parents, a child, whatever it is. These, me, Buddhist monk with a temple. How pathetic. Right? These, however sad they might be, all of us use different aspects to ground ourselves. This is the way, this is like the structural integrity. This is how we maintain the structural integrity of our beings. We make sure that we belong to something. Now, when you bring prapanchas in, something as strong as, for example, Dhammanusati, remember I also told you, Pauk Sayadaw, who gave instructions for the Patthana meditation, this monk who sort of, experienced certain stages of hysteria and beyond, right? I told you. Yeah. Now that is because why? Too much of information, too much of data, right? And when you don't have proper grounding, it is very difficult to progress. It makes you very anxious. That is why we start with Anapanasati, right? Even with regards to Vedananupassana, we really start with Anapanasati again, right? To those who have problems with their noses, we then teach them to look at the abdomen or the chest, right? We start with breathing meditation to ensure that we are able to bring our minds to a level where we are able to see that level of subtlety, right? So that is important to note, right? It is good to be aware, but when it comes to meditation, always start. Do not go looking. Shortcuts do not work. Shortcuts really do not work. You have to start with the groundwork, laying the foundations, just like your gardening, right? Shortcuts don't work, isn't it? Right? You have to do the preparations and give the care and love that the plant needs and see it grow organically, right? Organically. Apart, going through its cycle. Similarly, this practice, is the same. All right. The ending of the round of existence, right? The ending of the... Dil, can you read, please? Your mic is on mute.
Yeah. Number 18. The ending of the round of existence, page 114.
Yeah.
Indeed, also, when there is no I, no form, and no I consciousness, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of contact. And when there is no manifestation of contact, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of feeling. When there is no manifestation of feeling, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of perception. When there is no manifestation of perception, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of thinking. When there is no manifestation of thinking, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of an assault. By a proliferation of conception and perception. Indeed, also, when there is no ear, no sound, and no ear consciousness, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of contact. When there is no manifestation of contact, it's not possible to discern the manifestation of feeling. And when there is no manifestation of feeling, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of perception. And when there is no manifestation of perception, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of thinking. And when there is no manifestation of thinking, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of an assault by a proliferation of conception and perception. Indeed, also, when there is no nose, no smell, and nose conditioning, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of contact. When there is no manifestation of contact, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of feeling. When there is no manifestation of feeling, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of perception. When there is no manifestation of perception, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of thinking. When there is no manifestation of thinking, it is not possible to discern the manifestation of an assault by a proliferation of conception and perception. Indeed, also, when there is no tongue, no taste, and no tongue consciousness.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante.
And then no tongue, and then no body, and then no mind. All right. Please turn to page number 1. Please turn to page number 98, please.
8, right.
Okay. Page number 98. 332. Prapancha and Sanya. One of the best clues for translating Prapancha Sanya Sankha is probably found in Sanyutta Nikaya 847 74d, where perception Sanya is said to be the source of Prapancha Sankha, which should be translated as proliferation of notions or proliferative notions, or simply an explosion of ideas. The key word here is notions, sankha. Another vital clue comes from the Adhd Sutta, where it is said that those who perceive become the tools of mental proliferation. Those who perceive become the tools of mental proliferation. Prapancha yanta upayanti sannino. Here, perceive refers to the act of reactively. Again, here, perceive refers to the act of reactively seeing our present experiences as a reflection of our past and recognizing sense experiences in terms of lusting the pleasant, disliking the unpleasant, and ignoring the neutral. We became reactive creatures, creating our tinsel world from colors and shades of our senses and memories. How beautifully put, isn't it?
Beautiful. Yes.
This recognizing aspect of our mind is called perception. And here we see a close connection between prapancha and sanya. How we perceive our sense experiences spurs us to proliferate our pondering, imagining, and conjuring it all up in the most complicated ways. As such, Prapancha Sanya Sankha could be rendered as proliferation of notions due to perception or mental proliferation arising from conception and perception. more technically, proliferation of conception and apperception. This is a powerful narcissistic I do not know that word.
Soliloquy.
Soliloquy. Fed by our sense experiences with which we construct our world of varied and endless perceptions and notions. In simple terms, this can be said to be prolific cognizing and recognizing, or an explosion of knowing and recognizing. Or more colloquially,
Colloquially.
All right, I'm going to skip that. A burst of knowing and imagining. This is close to John D. Ireland's concepts of that proliferate through perception. Now, we spoke about this before. Where we had the past, the future. And we know as we go on with our meditation, as we proceed with our meditation and sort of advance in our meditation, a prime aspect which our meditation, or with the meditation we curtail, is this sort of this reactive state of mind which connects the experience of the present with past and future experiences, right? Experiences, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral of the past, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral experiences that we wish to experience in the future, affect the experience of the present. Affect the experience of the present. So this continued cognitive program, where we would take everything in a way that it fulfills our narcissistic urges arising from or stemming from the ego, is what then leads, according to the document, what leads to that prapancha, the proliferation, which has been explained in different words, right? Which has been explained in different words. We have the proliferation of notions, which is proliferation of notions. It is also referred to as an explosion of ideas with regards to that object that we have now cognized. Do we have any questions? Let's move on and answer questions after. Okay? Okay. Theory of perception. Right? Same page. Theory of perception. Page number 199. Theory of perception. The earliest Buddhist teaching on sense perception sanya is found in the Madhupindika Sutta, which is that which we are doing. This canonical version differs in some important aspects from the more developed Abhidhamma and commentarial version. But one feature is common to both, that is, that an act of complete perception does not arise as an immediate result of contact between the organ and the sense object. I will read that again, right? That an act of complete perception does not arise as an immediate result of contact between the organ and sense object. I think when reading that, you know, it is like, for example, think of a sandwich. The sandwich can have different layers. We can put caramelized onions on it. We can put cheese. We can have, you know, we can have maybe bacon or lettuce or, you know, a patty or fish, whatever it is. Different layers, isn't it? right? Then you can put some mayo or some mustard or some ketchup. Now, all of that, all of those layers has some layer, you know, if you take the mayo to the ketchup, to the patty, to the cheese, to whatever it is, to the bread, will have salt in it, some level of sodium. That is what this is talking about, if you understand what I mean. Right? Now, I am looking at you, or I am listening to something, or I am eating something. I'm eating, okay, I'm enjoying a nice piece of cheesecake, which I love. Right? Spoon by spoon, right? Spoon by spoon, as I am now eating it, right? With every spoon, the cake is there, the slice of cheesecake is there, but with each and every spoon that you shovel into your mouth, you will have a sense of I in each spoon. So much so, this is to understand, like the sandwich, there's sodium in each layer of the sandwich, right? Each sort of filling that you put in, meaning that I does not exist as a whole. Do you get it? I does not exist as a whole. I exist in each and every layer like that sodium. Why? Because we know in a chitta viti, we take one aspect of the person, the color, the name, the form. We do this for about 5 to 7 cycles to really know who that person is. And this happens so fast. So me, myself, and I has been mixed into each and every form, your color, your name. I have somehow found a way to leach my ego into each part of even your form. That is the extent to which the ego sustains itself in the world. That is why, you know, we think, for example, you take this phone, we think, okay, the ego is to each and every, this whole phone as its own element, right? But in actuality, it is, if you find it, it's in so many different aspects which formulate the whole phone itself. It's not one. That is why ego is so difficult to get rid of. Because it is over, under, inside, everywhere. We find some part of it to sort of cling on to with our ego. Let's go ahead. Right? That's the important point, even for your meditation. Right? So ego is not one whole sort of carpet or a quilt that you throw over something. No, it is inside in every aspect. Right? All right, moving on. Contact between the organ and the sense object. Perception is regarded as a process of thought, page number 99. Perception is regarded as a process of thought that begins as a simple sensation and ends up with a complete apprehension of object. That is how, through those 5 to 7 cycles of the chitta viti, right? That is taking in what has been perceived. Understood? Okay. The canonical text, the canonical theory of the perceptual process comprises 6 stages. The first stage is, for example, visual consciousness, chakku vinyana, which arises with the eye and visual object as its conditions. At this point, it is bare sensation before the object is fully apprehended, which is similarly understood in Abhidhamma. Second, is a process of sensory impression or sense contact. Chakku, sampassa, or phassa. Defined as the conjuncture of the sense organ, the sense object, and sense consciousness. The third is feeling, Vedana, which refers to the hedonic tone or emotional value of a resultant experience. Of a resultant hedonic tone or emotional value of a resultant experience. The fourth is perception, or more technically, apperception. The fact that vijnana, bare sensation, occurs before sanya shows that sanya represents a more complex form of awareness, while vijnana refers to mere sensory awareness. Sanya suggests a state of awareness obtained by introducing distinctions to the early stage of bare awareness. Of bare awareness. The sixth and last stage is called mental proliferation, prapancha, that hints at the tendency of the individual's imagination to break loose. To break loose. The imagination, it is, that word is not used for just poetic reasons. This is referring to the mind's ability to imagine reality. Sanya manyana, ditti manyana, tanha manyana, ditti manyana, sanya manyana, which is where you sort of imagine, not visualize, imagine, hallucinate is the word, where you hallucinate the existence of something just by causes brought in by yourself, meaning your past, present, and future. Understood? All right. Right. Monks. Okay, this is a very complex level of experience that is colored by one's desires and prejudices, past, future, present. The last stage of this process is clearly detailed in the short Chetana Sutta 1. Monks, what one intends and what one plans and what lies latent, this is a support for the continuation of consciousness. When there is a support, there is basis for the establishing of consciousness. When there is consciousness, when consciousness is established and increases, there occurs further rebirth. When there is further rebirth, there arises further birth, decay and death, sorrow, lamentation, physical pain, mental pain, anxiety, despair. Such is the origination of the whole mass of suffering, right? Such is the origination of this whole mass of suffering, right? Now, the sutta detailed, next page, please, page 100. We are going to finish this page and go back to the sutta. The sutta's detailed analysis of perceptual process is also an example of the application of the dependent arising formula in the present moment without reference to other lives. As Analio notes, the discourse depicts the arising of consciousness in dependence on sense organ and sense object, with contact being the coming together of the three. This passage reveals a deeper significance of each part of the terms patijja samuppada, dependent co-arising, without any need for different lifetimes or for the whole set of 12 links. Thus, realization of dependent co-arising can take place simply by witnessing the operation of conditionality in the present moment within one's own subjective experience, right? Within one's own subjective experience. Coming back to the sutta, please, page 115.
Bhante,
Yes.
can I have a question? Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, Damsi.
If you go back to the 99 and item number 4, and the last sentence, while vijnana refers to mere sensory awareness, sanya suggests a state of awareness obtained by introducing distinctions to the earlier stage of bare awareness. So that means in the process of sanya, we not only read the object, but we look at the object based on our previous knowledge or something like that, or exposure, right? And then you redefine or give much more meaning to the object.
Yeah. What my understanding is on the process of sanya is this distinction, which is now, when we have vijnana, which as explained has a general sense of awareness and awareness, and then when we have mental factors such as sanya playing a role of perception and bringing in that distinction, sanya, I believe, is somewhat like lighting the, it's like lighting the sort of on the, you know, on a firework you have this, you know, the part that you light, it sort of goes up and then it blows up and, you know, kaboom. You know, that sort of that part, that string or whatever it is that you light. I believe that sanya bringing in that distinction is a process like that. Where it starts, it gives a sense of direction distinctively from past, future, and present experience, usually attachment based on the past and future, right? To that moment where then it sort of gives it is somewhat like the process of Vottapana. With Vottapana being, for example, Yoniso Manasikara, right attention or wrong attention, being determined at the process of Vottapana. Similarly, when it comes to Sanya, where it sort of gives that directive or starts that ignition, in a way that there comes to be a different distinctive element to that which is perceived. You know, I feel it is more that spark which keeps on multiplying and developing on its own as it goes through the paths of processing through the Chittavritti. You know, creating more distinction on its own as it proceeds and matures. Because it has to be, you know, if we take the Javana processes, how is it that the karmas that are developed now, the Javana process, there would be a lot of, even this movement of me doing this, there are a lot of Javana process, not only 7. Many cycles of Chittavidis are going into me doing this right now. Right? How is it that when we take karma, karma is different from each section of the javanas? Why? Because the way the object is sort of managed and handled is different. It should be. It absolutely should be. So I believe that this sanya, yes, it brings that distinction is lit up and it sort of is worked with through the rest of the thing. Yes, process. Rest of the process. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Is there any other questions that anyone would like to ask regarding that? Regarding that part. Okay, moving on. Page number 116, please. Oh, sorry, page number 150 first. Sorry.
150.
150.
150.
150.
115.
115.
115.
Yeah.
All right. Also, when the Blessed One rose from his seat and entered his dwelling, after giving only a teaching in brief, saying, Bhikkhus, as regards the source from which proliferation of conception and perception assails a person, if one were to find nothing there to delight in, nothing there to welcome, nothing to cling on to, this is the end of the latent tendency of lust, aversion, views, doubt, conceit, desire for existence, and ignorance. This is the ending of the taking up of the rod and swords, quarrels, conflicts, disputes, strife, malicious words, and false speech. Here these evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. Without giving its meaning in detail, I understand its meaning in detail to be such. Now, if you wish, Venerable Sirs, go to the Blessed One and ask him over and again about the meaning of this. As the Blessed One explains it to you, so should you remember it. Then the bhikkhus, having joyfully approved of the Venerable Mahakachana's words, rose from their seats and approached the Blessed One. Having paid homage to the Blessed One, they sat at one side. Seated thus at one side, they said to the Blessed One, Bhante, the Blessed One rose from his seat and entered his dwelling after giving only a teaching in brief, without giving its meaning in detail, saying, Bhikkhus, as regards the source from which a proliferation of conception and perception assails a person, if one were to find nothing there to delight in, nothing there to welcome, nothing to cling to, this is the end of lust, aversion, the latent tendency of lust, aversion, views, doubt, conceit, desire for existence, and ignorance. This is the end, so on and so forth. Then Bhante, not long after the Blessed One had left, we thought now also the Blessed One rose from his seat and entered his dwelling. Moving on, then we thought the Venerable Mahakachana is paced, right? And then moving on, explaining what Venerable Mahakachana has explained. Next page, 117, Ananda simile. When this was said, the Venerable Ananda said to the Blessed One, Bhante, just as a person exhausted by hunger and weakness were to come upon a honey ball, wherever he were to taste it, he would get a sweet, agreeable taste. Even so, Bhante, any able-minded bhikkhu, wherever he might examine with wisdom the meaning of this Dhamma discourse, he would find satisfaction and confidence of mind. Bhante, what is the name of this Dhamma discourse? In connection, Ananda, you may remember this Dhamma discourse as the honey ball discourse. The Blessed One said this. The Venerable Ananda joyfully approved and the Blessed One's word. All right, coming back. Right, so that is the end of the Madhupindika Sutta. Right, that is the end of the Madhupindika Sutta. I think in a way we it also, to those of you who will be following the Paticcasamuppada, this will be a good sort of a framework to sort of base your sort of understanding in that part of things. And also remember, with everything that we are studying in the Abhidhamma, all of this connects to this sutta, really, right? It is all to actually to gain an advanced understanding into the intricacies of mind and how these intricacies, and in understanding these intricacies of mind, we are able to really learn how to drive it in a way and to sort of master the vehicle which we own, right? So coming back to, we are going to do a little bit more reading before, oh, it's 8:25. Can I take about 15 minutes more from your time? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. All right. So coming back to page number 101, 5.3. All right. We are going to quickly read it, right? 5.3. The latent tendencies. So page number 101, right? So 5.3. The latent tendencies are deeply embedded in one's mind through past habitual deeds and can only be uprooted on attaining the path. Wrong view and spiritual doubt are eliminated at stream winning. Sensual desire and aversion at non-return, conceit and attachment to the existence and ignorance only at arahanthood, the Abhidhamma states. Latent dispositions, anusaya, are defilements which lie along with the mental process to which they belong. Right? The latent dispositions, anusaya, are defilements which lie along with the mental process to which they belong. Right? Remember the sandwich and the sodium, right?
Yeah.
Rising to the surface as obsessions whenever they meet suitable conditions. The term latent dispositions highlights the fact that the defilements are liable to arise so long as they have been eradicated by the supramundane parts. That is understandable and clear, right? Moving on to page 102. Prapancha. Dan Lufhaus clarifications. Of the 7,868 occurrences of the term prapancha, in the Taishyo or the Zozu Zokyo editions of the Chinese Buddhist canon, I haven't been able to find a single one where it is being applied to someone else in any manner whatsoever. It comes up in contexts that list or describe mental problems used as a synonym or term related to kalpana, projective, conceptual construction, right? Construction. It's funny how we know the word kalpana in Sinhala and how the English word really explains what we actually do in it, right? Which is projective, conceptual construction. Which is so true, really. And vikalpa, false conceptual construction. The parikalpa, ubiquitous imaginary construction, right? And ubiquitous imaginary construction, right? Nagarjuna calls the telos, purpose of his own method, the putting to rest of prapancha. It occurs over 1,000 times in the Prajnaparamita corpus, translated by Zhuangzang, and occurs frequently in Asanga's writings and elsewhere. Asanga Tilakaratna. In the Chinese equivalent, okay, moving for all of that, 6.3. Prapancha implies verbal proliferation. Indian thinkers, taking language seriously, treated the verbal as the conceptual. So prapancha implies conceptual proliferation. For a simple and too simplistic for Indian usage, the father, the modern analytic philosopher, Frege, claimed that the referent of every proposition of true or false, by which he meant not only that any statement might be determined to be either true or false, but that true or false was the actual referent. For example, Roger Clemens took steroids. Is true or false? So the single statement immediately implies not one, but two possible state of affairs. I hope you got that. Did you get that? No? Okay, I'll come to that. To explore that statement further, right? To explain that statement further, additional statements which point to additional doubling of possible state of affairs. Since everything can be reduced to a proposition, even the propositions that everything cannot be reduced to a proposition, the entire universe of possible statements, by this doubling, has doubled the actual universe. Since frictional lines of thought can further proliferate, in actuality, the proliferation is exponentially greater than mere doubling. This is talking about the possibilities. Now, how do I put this? Okay. If we are cooking something, right? If we are cooking something, now we as Asians, we have so much of spices at home, right? Different spices. So much of spices that the white people cannot stand our houses. Right? So much of spices. And we know the spices so well, right? It might be a simple dal curry that we are about to make. But we know that by adding different spices in different quantities to the curry, we will have so many different types. We can achieve so many different types of taste. When you put coconut milk, it will be something. When you put yogurt, it will be something. If you put fresh cream, it will be something. If you put double cream, it will be something, right? If you put roasted spices, if you put all of those things, we're not even going to go into it, right? If you put fresh curry leaves, if you put the frozen curry leaves, which all of us have, it will be something. Now look at that. Prapancha is your mind. Your mind knows all of those possibilities, right? So much so that these possibilities are doubled, tripled, and sometimes tripled even on that, to sort of allow for all of those possibilities that could arise based on past experiences and future expectations to happen. Because we are unsure, isn't it? We are unsure. You cook something, you're not sure whether your husband would like it, or your children would like it, or your grandchildren would like it, or whether you would like it. Right? So you have all of these possibilities which just explodes in your mind, which absolutely explodes, creating altogether, if we are to pick, or if we are to really look at What prapancha creates, it creates a whole different world altogether, which we are really living. It creates a whole different world all together. Think about it, right? We often in movies, we hear, or not even movies, we know we are similar with the sort of the sentence we sort of shout at people to say, you are living in your head. You're living in your head. What does that mean? You're in your own world. You're in your own world. Teenagers, right? In their own worlds. Apparently the house cleans itself. Right? In their own words. What is that? That's prapancha, you see. That's prapancha. Because we have some sort of dhamma, right? Because we have received some sort of dhamma which has really, in a way, really nudged us on the head and said, look here, this is really what's happening. We have a little bit, don't think you have a lot, but a little tiny bit of sense to realize that this is a roller coaster. But if we did not have this, how many other ladies and gentlemen your age do you know who are still stuck in that alcohol, social life, coffee mornings? My mother still is stuck there. She's also part of those ladies. That cycle, right? That cycle. Why? Not aware of the prapanchas. Not aware, right? Not aware. That is what is meant here. The fact that we create a world altogether dependent upon past, present, and what we want to see in the future, we create a world altogether. That is what then causes us to not be, not sometimes understand the suffering of the world, to not be able to understand the minds of people, to not understand the diversity in the world that we live in, right? All of these things, that is what is meant. Do you understand now? It is referring to that prapancha's ability. So how do we create that world? Through the prapanchas. All the possibilities, and these possibilities are thought of. Why? To see, is this good for me or is this not? Should I add more lemon into the dal or should I not? You know what I mean? What is good for me? What do I value? To know that, we create a whole universe on its own, so much of doubling and multiplying to sort of arrive and know to what extent we want this or what we want it to be. And it happens so fast. It happens so fast. That is the saturation. That is why earlier it was referred to as an explosion of ideas. An explosion of ideas. Remember, anusaya, all of these kilesas spring from the ego. Right? It is me, myself, and I. Me, myself, and I always takes objects by a way of profit and loss analysis. By a way of profit and loss analysis. Is this good for me? If it is not, how do I turn it to be good for me? That's where that cunning part comes in, That's where the cunning part comes in. Now, all of a sudden, we start doing things which we assume are good for you, right? That is what prapancha is. Yes, Samantha, that is ignorance. Prapancha works with ignorance, remember, right? Ignorance, avidya, and tanha, these fuel the rest of the mind, right? All right, moving on. page 103. I'm sorry for taking too much of time today, but I want to just finish this off today. Just one paragraph to read, 2 paragraphs. 7, breaking the cycle of mental proliferation. The roots of the late, so page 103, everyone. Number 7, breaking the cycle of mental proliferation. The roots of the latent tendencies have 3 long and deep unwholesome roots, namely greed, hatred, and delusion. These roots cause one to habitually react to pleasant feelings with lust, painful feelings with aversion, and neutral feelings with ignorance. In other words, the 3 unwholesome respectively underlie each of these 3 latent tendencies, causing craving, views, and conceit to arise. Understood? Do you want me to go through the paragraph again? Yes? Just nod your head if you want me to. All right. The roots of the latent tendencies have 3 long and deep unwholesome roots, namely greed, hatred, and delusion. These roots cause one to habitually react to pleasant feelings with lust, to habitually react to pleasant feelings with lust, painful feelings with aversion, and neutral feelings with ignorance. In other words, the 3 unwholesome respectively underlie each of the 3 latent tendencies, causing craving, views, and conceit to arise. Now, if you understand this paragraph, this really tells us how deeply linked the prapanchas and anusayas are to our existence. The roots of consciousness, greed, hatred, delusion, non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion, are the most primal and core parts of our existence. And if we are speaking of anusaya to that extent, where we refer, or it has been referred to underlie with greed, hatred, delusion, there's a lot of work to do, right? There's a lot of work to do, right? Moving on. I hope this is not really scaring you in any way, you know. It is not to be, you know, I hope there's no scare. Mental proliferation, prapancha. Comprising of perceiving sanya, comprising of perceiving, and notion forming sankha, or conceiving manyana, is an explosion of mental constructs created by the power of the latent tendencies anusaya, of craving, tanha, ditthi, and mana. These constructs in turn lead to stronger and more tenacious defilements that motivate unwholesome thoughts, speech, and actions, all of which in return reinforce our negative attitudes and habits in a vicious cycle. These constructs in turn lead to stronger and tenacious defilements that motivate unwholesome thoughts, speech, and actions, all of which in turn reinforce our negative attitudes and habits in a vicious cycle, right? In a vicious cycle. So that is the end of the sutta, of the Madhupindika Sutta. I think you should go through this, read the sutta again with its footnotes, right? And after reading the sutta, come to the commentary part and read the commentary part, right? Don't feel ashamed to use a highlight and a pen, right? And really go through the sutta The sutra is simple. Talks about the latent tendencies and how the latent tendencies provoke that which we know as prapancha, and how the concept of I, conceit, supports the manifestation of different types of consciousnesses within a cognitive process to embellish with the prapancha attributes, which keeps us tied down to the cycle of arising and passing away within the whole 12 parts of the Panchasampada. Right? Through the 12 parts of the Panchasampada. It can sometimes feel as, oh my gosh, Bhante, are we able to really do this, you know? Why not? You know, I think we've struggled enough in life, you know, sort of running behind things that are not so important. We've just started to realize, right? Why don't we struggle with something with a bit more meaning, I would say, right? And even if it is a struggle, even if it is sometimes a uphill battle, really, I think it's very much worth it. You know, I think it's very much worth it. And even being lucky, I mean, I don't know whether you know, but you know, Venerable Sujato, I mean, he would call himself an atheist, right? And which I clearly know because we are linked in sort of certain corresponding with certain sort of for official reasons, and I see him using the word atheist a lot, right? And Venerable Sujato, he's a respected, very bright, educated monk, and you know, I must say, being born a Catholic and being brought up in a household which, you know, was Catholic, and I am very proud to be able to go through and handle this Dhamma. I must say honestly, I find it such a privilege and honor to be handling, because I feel like we are so lucky in a way, in so many ways, especially when it comes to, you know, associating ourselves with a doctrine which is not really about dogmatic belief, but really about understanding logic and reason, right? And in sort of looking at, I mean, y'all are not idiots. You know, all of you, most of you all are professionals, educated people, and people who work with society in different ways. And looking at this, I believe that you too see the profundity of the materials that we are really working with, right? And this is not in any way, you know, sometimes, of course, me being dramatic, you know, sometimes I feel whether I am putting you off a bit. But remember, even with all the things that we are attached to in this world, right? Even spending time sort of working with the Dhamma and sort of embrace and taking the Dhamma is well worth it. Even if we can attain Nibbana and work towards Nibbana, of course, reading through the Dhamma and going through does effectively help us in our goal towards Nibbana. But if we could attain Nibbana in this very life, amazing. Even if we can't, you know, let us sort of take in the Dhamma in a way not to sort of look down at another person or not to sort of be classes about it, but to really sort of see how can we embody this? How can we really sort of put it into practice? How can I really embody and understand through experience what the Buddha is speaking about? It is not an easy practice. Anyone who tells you that it is an easy practice has no idea about what we are going through. But going through, but being able to, I think, you know, being with the Dhamma and sort of having the Dhamma in your life is such an important and sort of a blessing, really. It really is, right? It really is. So keep on motivating yourself and reading through Dhamma. What do you want to do next for the sutta? Any sort of suggestions? Right, this Madhupindika Sutta was your suggestion. So okay, so if you have any suggestions, put it on the group and we will decide on sutta for next week. Okay, all right. So one thing is, do you want holidays for Christmas? No one? Yes? Yeah? Okay, I think it is. It would only be fair to give holidays for Christmas, isn't it? So when shall we have Christmas holidays?
Maybe 23rd.
My last week of Christmas.
Last week of that
December.
Is the 21st to the 27th?
Yeah.
That's too much. Too many holidays.
Bante need a break, I think. Bante worked very hard.
Bante, you need a break. I think
Bante need a break, definitely.
All right.
Definitely.
Okay. Silence in my court.
No, Bante need a break.
Right. I think possibly if we do the 22nd, right? So that's a Tuesday. So we can do the Abhidhamma class on Monday.
Yeah.
And then 22nd onwards, it will be holidays up until the 28th.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe actually what we will do is, because of course New Year is also coming up, why don't we then, we will have 21st and 28th, the Abhidhamma class will be there, right? Why don't we, so then all the rest of the classes are cancelled up until the 1st.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we will just do the Abhidhamma classes, that is on the 21st and the 28th, that is 2 Mondays. Yeah? And all the rest of the classes for that period is cancelled, only the Abhidhamma classes are going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, all right. All right, and that is it. So put the sutras on the thing, and also with regard to the Paticcasamuppada, I'm sorry to keep you all so long. Regarding the Paticcasamuppada, I thought maybe January would be a good to start next year with the Paticcasamuppada. So we are looking at a Saturday. We are looking at a Sunday. We are looking at a Sunday for 12 weeks starting. So if we say January 3rd onwards, right? January 3rd onwards, every Sunday for 12 weeks at 1 p.m. Sunday, right? So just the recordings will be there. I know it's a big commitment, but the recordings are going to be there.
Bante, I have one quick question.
Yes.
About the meditation sessions, Bante.
Yeah.
The meditation classes. So will it be these two this weekend only? That means no.
So the meditation classes will be there on this weekend. Will be there on this weekend. The next weekend.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
So we are only having 1 week off for that sort of period. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So block that out for dependent origination 12. And the dependent origination, what I suggested to Bante is 1 hour 30 minutes. 1 hour 30 minutes is fine. Yeah. Just like
Bante,
this.
Is that the discussion and questions? Bante, is that discussion and questions as well?
Not in an official sense, but we can have about 15 minutes at the end for maybe 15 to 20 minutes at the end But of course, the questions, I mean, we will tell you all of this, the questions will have to be really succinct and to the point.
Okay.
And so that, you know, because there is a lot of ground to cover through the 12 weeks, right?
Correct.
So yes, so it is, yes, so that is it. And I will,
But is that the one in Sinhala? That one?
It is in
Oh.
Sinhala.
Okay, thank you.
Right, it is in Sinhala. It is in Sinhala. We have something for the English speakers as in English as well, which I will update you soon. But for now, that is it. Thank you. Good night. I will see you all through the weekend. Right.
Good night.
Good night.